She had been running for 3 years, and in all that time, no one had ever caught her. Until tonight. The market square of Thornhaven was supposed to be safe. A border town, unremarkable, the kind of place powerful people forgot existed. Elara had chosen it precisely for its anonymity, for the way she could disappear into the crowd of fishmongers and textile merchants, just another woman with calloused hands and a forgettable face. She should have known better than to trust safety. The first sign something was wrong came when the crowd parted. Not gradually, the way people shifted for a merchant's cart or a noble's horse. This was different. This was instinctive. Prey recognizing a predator. Elara's hand moved to the knife hidden beneath her cloak, her heart already hammering against her ribs. She didn't turn around. Running would only draw attention. Instead, she kept walking, kept her pace steady, kept her breathing even despite the way her pulse screamed at her to flee. You. The voice was deep, commanding. The kind of voice that expected obedience simply by existing. It rolled through the square like distant thunder, and she felt it in her bones before she processed the word. She didn't stop. Couldn't stop. 3 years of survival instincts wouldn't let her. A hand closed around her wrist. The touch was firm but not bruising, warm despite the evening chill, and the moment his skin met hers, something happened that she couldn't explain. Heat shot up her arm, spreading through her chest, settling somewhere behind her sternum like a second heartbeat. Her breath caught. Her vision sharpened. And every instinct she had, every warning bell that had kept her alive for 3 years, went suddenly, terrifyingly silent. She turned. He was tall. That was her first coherent thought. Tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of build that spoke of years of training, of battles fought and won. His hair was dark, almost black, pushed back from a face that might have been carved from stone, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. But his eyes were the color of molten gold, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel like she was standing in direct sunlight. "You have the wrong person," she said, and she was proud that her voice didn't shake. The man tilted his head, studying her. Something flickered across his features too fast to name, and then the corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. Something more dangerous. "No," he said, and his voice was quieter now, meant only for her. "I've been looking for you." Before we continue, please take 2 seconds to like this video. It tells me you want more stories like this. The guards materialized from the crowd like shadows given form. 6 of them, dressed in black leather armor marked with a symbol she recognized with a jolt of pure terror. The Golden Wolf. The crest of the Alpha King. There must be some mistake. She tried again, but her voice had lost its steadiness. "I'm no one. A seamstress. I mend clothes for the merchants here." "You're a poor liar." He hadn't released her wrist. His thumb was tracing slow circles against her pulse point, and she wondered if he could feel how fast her heart was racing. "Your hands are calloused in the wrong places for needlework. You carry a blade beneath your cloak, and you've been scanning escape routes since the moment I touched you." Her blood went cold. "Who are you?" "I think you already know." She did. She'd known from the moment she saw that golden wolf, had known even before that, in the way her body had reacted to his touch. The Alpha King, Dominic Ashford, ruler of the 5 territories, the most powerful man on the continent. And he was looking at her like she was something precious he'd finally found. "Whatever you want," she said. "Whatever you think I can give you, you're wrong. I'm not who you're looking for." "Elara Winters," he said, and she flinched at her own name, a name she hadn't spoken aloud in 3 years. Daughter of Marcus and Helena Winters, Former handmaiden to Lady Catherine of the Northern House, disappeared 3 years ago after witnessing something you shouldn't have. The air left her lungs. How do you? I've had people searching for you since the day you vanished. His grip on her wrist shifted, gentled, but he didn't let go. You're remarkably difficult to find. Because I don't want to be found. She tried to pull away. His hand remained steady, unmoving, but somehow not forceful. Please, whatever you think I know, whatever you want from me, I want you safe. The words landed like a physical blow. She stopped struggling, staring up at him with what she knew must be naked confusion. What? You witnessed Lord Harrington murder his wife. His voice was low, careful, as if he was gentling a frightened animal. You ran before he could silence you, and you've been running ever since, staying one step ahead of the assassins he's sent after you. Her throat tightened. She hadn't spoken about that night in 3 years, had barely let herself think about it. The screaming, the blood. Lady Catherine's eyes, empty and staring, while her husband stood over her body with a dripping blade. How do you know that? She whispered. Because I've spent 3 years building a case against him. Something dark moved through those golden eyes. And you're the only witness still alive. The ground seemed to tilt beneath her feet. You want me to testify? I want you to help me bring him to justice. He released her wrist finally, but didn't step back. And I want to keep you alive long enough to do it. She should run. She knew she should run. This was everything she'd feared, everything she'd spent 3 years avoiding. Being found, being used, being put in a position where powerful men could destroy her. But there was something in his eyes. Something that didn't match the ruthless reputation that preceded him. A weariness, maybe. A heaviness that spoke of responsibility carried too long. And if I refuse, then I'll let you go. He said it simply, without hesitation. But Harrington won't stop hunting you. His assassins will find you eventually. And when they do, you'll die without ever having a chance to make what you saw matter. She laughed, and it came out bitter. You think I don't know that? You think I haven't spent every night for 3 years knowing I'm living on borrowed time? I think you're exhausted. His voice softened. I think you're tired of running. And I think some part of you wants to stop. The accuracy of it stole her breath. She looked away, blinking hard against the sudden burning in her eyes. 3 years. 3 years of sleeping with one eye open, of trusting no one, of building walls so high she'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone in. Why do you care? The question came out rough. She wasn't your subject. This isn't your territory. Why spend 3 years looking for a woman you've never met? For a long moment he didn't answer. Then he lifted his hand, slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was impossibly gentle for hands that had held swords, that had commanded armies. Because some injustices are too great to ignore, he said, and because every night you spend running is a night you can't sleep without fear, I'd like to give you back your peace. Elara stared at him, searched his face for the lie, the manipulation, the hidden agenda. She found nothing but steady patience and an intensity that made her stomach flip. 1 month, she heard herself say. I'll give you 1 month to build your case. After that, whether you've succeeded or not, I disappear again. Something flickered in his expression. Relief, maybe, or triumph. Agreed. And I want my own quarters. Locked, with a key only I possess. Done. And if at any point I feel unsafe, I'm gone. No arguments, no pursuit. He nodded once, accepting. Then he held out his hand, not a grip meant to capture this time, but an offer. Then let me take you somewhere warm. You're shivering. She hadn't noticed, but now that he mentioned it, she could feel the cold seeping through her thin cloak, the evening chill raising goosebumps along her arms. She looked at his extended hand. Taking it felt like stepping off a cliff. She took it anyway. The journey to the capital took 4 days. Dominic insisted on traveling with a full guard, which chafed against every instinct Elara had developed. Crowds meant witnesses. Witnesses meant people who could be bribed, threatened, turned. But when she voiced her concern, he simply said, "No one touches you while you're under my protection. Not Harrington's assassins. Not anyone." There was something in the way he said it. An absolute certainty that bordered on ferocity. It should have frightened her. Instead, it made something loosen in her chest. Some tension she'd been carrying so long she'd forgotten it was there. They traveled in a covered carriage, she and Dominic and a female attendant named Mira, who seemed to exist primarily to ensure propriety was maintained. The king spent most of the journey reviewing documents, his brow furrowed in concentration, occasionally asking Elara questions about what she'd witnessed. She answered them all, haltingly at first, then with increasing steadiness as she realized he wasn't pushing, wasn't demanding. He let her find her own pace, let her stop when the memories became too heavy, let her breathe through the worst of it without comment. On the 3rd night, they stopped at an inn. Elara couldn't sleep. The unfamiliar sounds kept her on edge, every creak of floorboards sending her hand to the knife she kept beneath her pillow. Finally, near midnight, she gave up and made her way downstairs. The common room was empty except for one figure seated by the dying fire. Dominic looked up when she entered. He'd removed his formal coat, rolled his sleeves to the elbow. In the flickering firelight, he looked less like a king and more like a man carrying too many burdens. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Could you?" A ghost of a smile. "I rarely do." She hesitated, then crossed the room and sat in the chair opposite his. The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows across the walls. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Anything. Why are you really doing this?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, rougher, more honest. "My sister was murdered when I was 17. Elara's breath caught. The man who did it was powerful, connected. Everyone knew he was guilty, but no one would testify. They were too afraid." His jaw tightened. He walked free, lived another 20 years before dying peacefully in his bed. And my sister never got justice. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "When I heard about Catherine Harrington, when I learned there was a witness who'd managed to escape." He met her eyes. "I couldn't let it happen again. I couldn't let another murderer escape because good people were too afraid to speak." She understood then. Understood in a way that settled into her bones. This wasn't politics for him. It was personal. It was atonement. "What was her name?" she asked softly. "Your sister." "Elena." The name hung in the air between them. Elara found herself leaning forward, drawn by something she couldn't name. "She would have been proud of you," she said, "for trying to make it right." His eyes flickered with something raw, quickly suppressed. "I hope so." They sat in silence after that, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like understanding, like the first tentative threads of trust being woven between two people who'd forgotten what trust felt like. Eventually, Elara's eyes grew heavy. She didn't remember falling asleep, but she woke at dawn with a blanket draped over her shoulders and the fire stoked warm. Dominic was gone, but somehow, she knew he'd been the one to cover her. The palace was overwhelming. Elara had grown up in a minor noble's household. She'd seen wealth before, but nothing had prepared her for the scale of the royal residence, its marble halls and vaulted ceilings and artwork that probably cost more than entire villages. True to his word, Dominic gave her private quarters, a suite of rooms in the east wing, with windows overlooking the gardens and a door with a lock that only she controlled. Mira was assigned as her attendant, but even she knocked before entering. For the first week, Elara barely left her rooms. The transition was too jarring, the exposure too raw. She spent hours at the window, watching guards patrol the grounds, mapping exits and entrance points out of habit. But slowly, gradually, she began to venture out. The palace library drew her first. It was vast, walls lined with books from floor to ceiling, quiet alcoves perfect for disappearing into. She was curled in one such alcove, lost in a history of the Northern Territories, when a shadow fell across her page. I wondered where you'd gone. Dominic stood at the entrance to her hiding spot, dressed casually in a simple shirt and trousers. Without the crown and formal attire, he looked younger, more approachable. I didn't realize I needed to announce my movements, she said. You don't. He leaned against the bookshelf, arms crossed. But my guards lost track of you 3 hours ago. They were starting to panic. Your guards need better training. A surprised laugh escaped him, warm and genuine. I'll be sure to pass that along. She found herself smiling despite herself. Did you need something? I came to invite you to dinner. He paused. With me, privately, to discuss the case, but also... He seemed to struggle with something. I'd like to know more about you, beyond what you witnessed. The request was so unexpected, so human, that she didn't know how to respond. This was the Alpha King, the most powerful ruler on the continent, and he was standing in a dusty library corner, asking if she'd have dinner with him. Why? She asked. Because you intrigue me. His honesty was disarming. Because in the last week I've watched you memorize patrol schedules, befriend 3 kitchen maids, and somehow acquire a knife that none of my guards can figure out how you obtained. You're extraordinary. I'd like to understand how you became that way. Her cheeks flushed. I'm not extraordinary. I'm just trying to survive. Survival has a way of revealing who we truly are. He pushed off from the bookshelf. Dinner is at 7. No obligation, but I hope you'll come. He left before she could answer. She sat in the alcove for another hour, the book forgotten in her lap, her thoughts a tangled mess she couldn't begin to sort. She went to dinner. It became a habit after that. Every evening at 7, she'd make her way to a private dining room in the north wing, where Dominic waited with food and conversation and questions that somehow never felt like interrogation. He asked about her childhood, her parents, both dead now from fever 5 years past. Her years in service to Catherine, who'd been kind in a distant way, who'd treated her less like a servant and more like a young woman in need of protection. Is that why you ran? He asked one night. Why you didn't go to the authorities? Elara set down her wineglass. I was a handmaiden accusing a lord. Who would have believed me? I would have. You weren't there. She met his eyes. No one was. No one with the power to actually do something. I'm here now. 3 words. Simple. Direct. But they landed with the weight of a promise, and Elara felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been locked away for so long she'd forgotten it existed. Why does this feel different? She whispered. Why do I believe you when I haven't believed anyone in 3 years? He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. The same heat sparked between them, the same electricity that had flooded through her that first night in the market square. But this time, she didn't pull away. I don't know, he admitted, but I feel it too. Since the moment I touched you, something... He shook his head. I don't have words for it. That should terrify me. Does it? She considered the question, considered the warmth of his fingers against hers, the way his eyes seemed to see past every wall she'd built. No, she said finally, and that terrifies me more. The case against Harrington built slowly. Dominic's investigators gathered evidence, documents, testimonies from servants who'd seen bruises and heard screams. But without Elara's direct witness account, it was circumstantial. Accusations that could be denied, dismissed. Her testimony was the key. Harrington knew it too. The first assassination attempt came 2 weeks into her stay. A man in servant's clothing, poison in a wine carafe meant for her table. He was caught before the wine was ever poured, but it shattered the fragile peace Elara had begun to build. She found Dominic in his war room, speaking rapidly to his captain of the guard. His expression when he saw her was thunderous. "You should be in your rooms. I should know what's happening." She didn't raise her voice, but something in her tone made the captain take a step back. "This is my life. I have a right to be informed." For a moment she thought he might argue. Then his jaw unclenched and he nodded. "Leave us," he told the captain. When they were alone, he said, "The man was hired by Harrington. We have a full confession. Will that be enough to arrest him?" Attempting to assassinate a witness under royal protection is a crime, yes. But Harrington has powerful allies. He'll claim the man acted alone, that he knew nothing of it. Dominic's hands curled into fists. "We need more." "Then let me testify. Now. Publicly. Before he can try again." "It's not that simple. The council requires formal proceedings. Harrington has the right to face his accuser, to present his own witnesses. If we rush, his lawyers will find procedural grounds to dismiss everything." Elara wanted to scream. 3 years of running, and even now, even with the most powerful man in the realm on her side, justice remained just out of reach. "How long?" she asked. 6 weeks. That's the earliest I can convene a formal tribunal." 6 more weeks of looking over her shoulder. 6 more weeks of wondering if the next servant, the next guard, the next shadow in the corner was there to kill her. Dominic moved toward her, slowly giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hands in his. "I will not let him hurt you." His voice was low, fierce. "Every guard in this palace would die before letting anything happen to you. I would die before—" "Don't." The word came out sharper than she intended. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because I can't—" She stopped, breathing hard. "I've spent 3 years accepting that I might die any day. I've made peace with it. But I can't make peace with you dying for me. I'm not worth that." His grip on her hands tightened. "You're wrong. Dominic. You're wrong." He stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat of him, could see the gold flecks in his amber eyes. "You are worth everything. Every resource I've spent, every year of searching, every guard I would assign. You're worth all of it. You don't even know me. I know you're brave." His voice dropped, turned rough. "I know you've survived things that would have broken lesser people. I know you're kind, because I've watched you with the servants, seen how you treat them like equals. I know you're loyal, because you're still carrying guilt for not being able to save Catherine, even though there was nothing you could have done." Her eyes were burning. When had she started crying? "And I know," he continued, softer now, "that something in me recognized something in you the moment we touched. Something I've never felt before. Something I don't fully understand." She should pull away. She should run. That's what she did. What she'd always done. Run before anyone got too close. Before caring about someone became a weapon that could be used against her. But her feet didn't move. And when Dominic lifted one hand to cup her face, his thumb brushing away her tears, she leaned into his touch instead. "Tell me to stop," he murmured. She didn't. His lips met hers, and the world fell away. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, a question more than a statement. But when she pressed closer, when her hands found their way to his chest and gripped the fabric of his shirt, something broke open between them. He kissed her like she was precious, like she mattered, like every moment of it was a privilege he hadn't earned, but would spend his lifetime trying to deserve. And she kissed him back with 3 years of loneliness, 3 years of fear, 3 years of wanting something she'd been too afraid to name. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "When this is over, when Harrington is brought to justice. Stay. You're asking me to trust you. I'm asking you to let me earn that trust, for as long as it takes." She thought of her mother who'd told her on her deathbed that love was worth the risk. She thought of Catherine, who'd died without ever knowing the freedom of choosing her own path. She thought of every night she'd spent alone, cold, wishing for something she thought she'd never have. "Okay," she breathed. His smile, when it came, transformed his entire face, made him look younger, lighter, like a man who'd just been given a gift he'd never expected. "Okay," he repeated, and kissed her again. The weeks that followed were a strange contradiction. Danger pressed in from all sides, Harrington's desperation manifesting in 3 more assassination attempts, each bolder than the last. But within the palace walls, within the protected space Dominic had created, Elara found something she'd thought lost forever: peace. She woke each morning without fear, ate meals without checking for poison, walked the gardens without constantly scanning for threats. Dominic's presence was a constant, whether physically or in the form of guards who shadowed her movements with professional discretion. And every night, after the duties of kingship were done, he came to her. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. He told her about the pressures of ruling, the weight of a crown he'd never asked for but couldn't set down. She told him about the small dreams she'd had before, the ones she'd abandoned when survival became her only goal. "What did you want to be?" he asked one night, lying beside her in her chambers, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her arm. "A healer," she admitted. "My mother taught me herbs and poultices. I wanted to help people. You still could. After everything that's happened, especially after." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with an intensity that still made her breath catch. "You understand suffering. You understand what it means to need help and have none. You'd be extraordinary." She didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process someone believing in her future when she'd spent so long not believing she'd have one. So she kissed him instead. The trial came on a gray morning, clouds heavy with the promise of rain. The great hall was packed with nobility, all come to witness the Alpha King's case against one of their own. Elara stood in a small antechamber, hands trembling as Mira helped her into the gown Dominic had provided. Deep blue silk, simple but elegant. "A queen's fabric," Mira had said, then blushed furiously and refused to elaborate. "You don't have to do this," Mira said gently. "Yes, I do." She'd waited 3 years for this moment. 3 years of running, of hiding, of carrying the weight of what she'd seen like stones in her chest. Today, she would finally set them down. The doors opened. Dominic stood on the other side, resplendent in formal attire, the crown on his head catching the light. But his eyes were soft when they found hers. "Ready?" She took his offered arm. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The walk to the witness stand felt endless. Every eye in the hall tracked her movement, whispers rising and falling like ocean waves. She could see Harrington at the defendant's table, his face a mask of contempt that didn't quite hide the fear beneath. Good. Let him be afraid. She told her story. Every detail, every horror, every moment of that terrible night. The words came easier than she'd expected, flowing out of her like water finally released from a dam. And as she spoke, she watched the faces of the nobles change, doubt becoming belief, disgust replacing skepticism. When she was done, the hall was silent. Harrington's defense was weak. Flimsy alibis, character witnesses who seemed uncertain, arguments that collapsed under the weight of evidence Dominic had spent 3 years gathering. By the time the council retired to deliberate, even his own allies were looking at him differently. The verdict came within hours, Guilty. The word echoed through the hall, and Elara felt something inside her finally break free. Tears streamed down her face as guards led Harrington away, his protests falling on deaf ears. It was over. After 3 years, it was finally over. Then Dominic was there, his arms around her, his lips against her hair. "You did it," he murmured. "You're safe now. He can never hurt you again." She clung to him, sobbing into his chest, releasing grief and fear and hope all tangled together. He held her through it all, steady as bedrock, patient as the tide. 2 months later, spring had transformed the palace gardens into riots of color. Flowers bloomed in every direction, their fragrance sweetening the air, their petals bright against the green. Elara knelt in the herb garden she'd been given, hands deep in the soil, feeling the sun warm on her back. She'd started training with the palace healers a month ago, picking up her mother's teachings where she'd left them. Already, the head healer had commented on her natural gift. "I thought I'd find you here." She looked up, shading her eyes against the light. Dominic stood at the garden's edge, dressed simply, the crown notably absent. He did that more often now, shed the trappings of kingship when it was just them, became just a man, standing before a woman he loved. The rosemary needed tending. She sat back on her heels, brushing dirt from her hands. And I needed the quiet. He crossed to her, offering a hand to help her stand. "Walk with me?" They wandered through the gardens, her hand in his, conversation easy and warm. She still marveled at it sometimes, this life she'd stumbled into, the belonging, the safety, the love. "I have something for you," Dominic said, stopping beside a fountain. "Close your eyes." She raised an eyebrow. "The last time you said that, you gave me an entire wing of the library. This is smaller. I promise." She closed her eyes, smiling despite herself, felt him take her hand, turn it palm up, place something small and light in her grasp. "Look." A ring rested in her palm. Simple gold, set with a stone the same amber color as his eyes. She stared at it, her heart suddenly hammering. "I know it's only been a few months," he said, and his voice was rough in a way she'd learned meant vulnerability. "I know you've only just found your peace, but I've known since that first night in the market square. I've known since I touched you and felt something in me click into place." "Dominic, let me finish." He took both her hands in his, the ring pressed between their palms. "You changed everything. Before you, I was going through the motions, ruling because I had to, not because I wanted to. You made me remember why I started this fight. You made me want to be better, not just as a king, as a man." Her vision was blurring. She blinked hard, refusing to let tears fall before she'd heard everything. "I'm not asking you to decide today. I know you need time, but I wanted you to know that when you're ready, if you're ready, I want to spend the rest of my life earning the trust you gave me that first night." He lifted her hand, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "I love you, Elara. Whatever you decide, that won't change." She looked at the ring, looked at him, thought of everything she'd lost, everything she'd gained, everything she'd never thought she'd have again. "Yes," she said. He blinked. "Yes. I don't need time." She was laughing now, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. "I've spent 3 years running from everything. I'm done running. I want to stay. I want you. I want this life, whatever it brings." His face transformed. That same smile from their first kiss, bright and young and full of wonder. He swept her into his arms, lifting her off her feet, spinning her in a circle that sent flower petals scattering around them. "You mean it?" he asked, setting her down but keeping her close, his arms locked around her waist. "I mean it." She cupped his face in her hands, memorizing every line, every shadow, every fleck of gold in those amber eyes. I love you too, Dominic. I think I have since you offered me your hand in that cold market square. He kissed her then, in the middle of the garden, with the sun warming their faces and the fountain singing behind them. And Elara thought of her mother, of her father, of Catherine, of everyone she'd lost along the way. She hoped they could see her now. She hoped they knew she'd finally found her way home. The wedding was held at midsummer, when the days were long and warm and the entire kingdom seemed to bloom with new life. Nobles came from every territory, commoners lined the streets, and the celebration lasted for 7 days. But Elara's favorite moment came after, in the quiet of their chambers, when the crown had been set aside and the formal attire discarded. Any regrets? Dominic asked, pulling her close. Just one. She traced a finger along his jaw, smiling at his sudden concern. I wish I'd let you catch me sooner. His laugh was warm against her skin. I would have waited forever. I know. She pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. That's why I didn't have to. Outside, the kingdom celebrated their new queen. Inside, two people who'd been broken in different ways held each other close and finally felt whole. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Where are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. I love hearing your thoughts. And if you'd like to support me, please subscribe. It's free, and it helps more people hear these stories.